Hello, everyone. I would like first to welcome Transeo members to this Transeo webinar highlighting the work of our member EY Belgium about the international growth of SMEs in Wallonia. Let me introduce today's speakers. We will have the chance to have Mr. Jean-Pierre Di Bartolomeo, who is our chairman, Transeo Association, as well as CEO of Sowalfin, Marie-Laure Moreau, Managing Partner Wallonia at EY Belgium, and finally Caroline Cleppert, Economist and Senior Manager at EY Belgium. Let me briefly outline today's webinar. First, we will have an explanation of the context of the study that has been carried out. Then Marie-Laure and Caroline will share the main conclusion of the EY study. You will also discover an interesting tool developed in parallel to this study, the EY Growth Navigator, which is a tool to support entrepreneurs in their growth projects. Last but not least, speakers will share with you key messages of the study and considerations for Wallonia and Europe, especially in today's situation of COVID-19 crisis. But let's get started right away. Mr. Di Bartolomeo, welcome. Sowalfin is the one-stop shop for Walloon SMEs. You provide information, guidance, and financing solutions to entrepreneurs. Why did you ask EY to perform this study?
Well, good morning, everybody. Well, first of all, beside the financing SMEs, one of our mission at the Sowalfin, in the group of the Sowalfin, is also to support SMEs in their growth strategies and in their projects. Whether it's in Belgium or abroad, we wanted to have a clear view on the current situation of how the Walloon companies can improve their growth. What are the preferred growth options? What were the most challenging aspects for them, especially when going abroad? Findings would finally help Sowalfin adapt its services to meet the company's needs. We have collaborated with EY Belgium to conduct a study among Walloon SMEs about their international growth, the growth potential of the companies. So this is what we are going to share with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Di Bartolomeo. I will now invite our member EY to briefly explain what this study is about. So Marie-Laure, you were the one to pilot this study in collaboration with Sowalfin. Can you tell us a bit more about it, please?
Yes, thank you, Hugo, and good afternoon, everybody. So we're going to speak about the international growth, and you know, Hugo, that growth within EY is a really part of our DNA. At EY, we believe that sufficient and sustainable growth is really necessary, but for all regions of the world, in order to preserve our social model and also manage the transformation of our economy, which is even more true now in the digital transformation that we currently face today. And you probably know that each year EY organizes this contest, the Entrepreneur of the Year, all over the world. And this contest promotes companies that have been successful with growth. But actually in Belgium, we have two different contests, a French-speaking one and a Flemish-speaking one. And we often notice that Walloon companies are smaller in size than their Flemish peers. And also when you look at the slide, at the key indicators that are here shown on these slides, you see that there are several indicators that show that Walloon companies are generally less internationalized than companies from the other regions of Belgium. Actually, we made a study about 2 years ago on the Pépite Wallonne, and the aim of this study was to understand why Walloon companies are smaller and less internationalized than their peers from other parts of Belgium. I will not go into the details of this study. However, some of the main reasons that were identified were linked to cultural aspects, such as education, entrepreneurial mindset, limited appetite for risk, but also the lack of knowledge of foreign languages. But anyway, let's go back to our current study, and listen to Caroline, who is going to explain what are the key takeaways of the current studies relating to international growth paths of the Walloon companies. So Caroline, I give you the floor.
So thank you, Marie-Laure. So the first question we raised was, what are the main reasons that drive companies to consider international expansion? And the main motivation, of course, for going international remains market expansion. The Belgian market is very small. Furthermore, in certain sectors, it's necessary to internationalize in order to remain competitive. This is the case for technology companies, for example, whose main competitors are located outside Belgium and outside even Europe. In addition, there are many new business opportunities abroad, as much of the world economic growth is taking place now outside of Europe, with emerging economies in Asia, for example, growing in economic importance. But also it has an impact, of course, on the performance of the company. So internationalization is a growth lever for companies. Internationalization is all the more important in a small open economy such as Wallonia. Various indicators of growth can be observed in companies that internationalize. We can talk about profitability, we can talk about more dynamic business network, R&D and innovation intensification, and more other indicators. So while internationalization may bring certain benefits to company, it's also a source of cost. Cost can be both direct and indirect. We can summarize the change in company performance linked to internationalization in 3 key phases. Those 3 key phases are coming from the literature review that we have done. So in phase 1, this phase is considered as negative due to the initial cost of internationalization. Phase 2 is more positive, of course, whilst phase 3 is also negative due to the cultural and other barriers to further international expansion. So internationalization may be beneficial, of course, until a certain point, beyond which the cost of further international expansion can exceed the potential benefit. And I'm saying can exceed. So it's really important that the international projects have to be closely monitored by the enterprise itself, but of course by the management team of the company. So the international growth process can be broken down into 5 stages, as you can see in the graph on the slide. All of the companies that we have interviewed choose to invest in internal growth. This consists of getting into international markets by hiring sales staff or by conducting international marketing campaigns, for example. This stage of internationalization can also involve development through e-commerce. However, most of the companies that we interviewed did not view e-commerce as a priority. The majority of the companies that we interviewed, so I would say nearly 80% of the company interviews, also opt for local agent and or local distribution contracts. The aim of this outsourced sales in international markets in order for the company to focus on internal innovation. This implies a loss of control, but it also facilitates market access, especially when cultural and geographical barriers may be significant. The companies that we interviewed saw little incentive in setting up branches, preferring instead to create new legal entities, subsidiaries in foreign markets. Subsidiaries ensure complementarity and our direct presence in the local market. Of the companies that we have interviewed, less than 1 in 5 had made an international acquisition, as this process required substantial resources. However, over 50, I would say 50%, so half of the companies that we interviewed had planned to make an international acquisition. That means that they have the intention, the international acquisition can be in the plan, in the strategy, but doing an international acquisition is another story, of course. So the majority of the companies that we interviewed were focused on a gradual international process with a dual focus: export as the primary means of internationalization, and with the focus of internationalization being neighboring countries. That's the general pattern that we observe in our interviews, but also in the literature that we have read. Only companies with the company that are considered as niche leaders in technology sector and whose managers have previous international experience position themselves strategically on the international market. And so from the beginning of their growth history, they position themselves on the international market through international acquisition, but not only international acquisition, by exportation and other means to have an international presence. It's like it's written in their DNA. So part of our study was a questionnaire. So we sent the questionnaire to the company, and we asked them several questions. And one of those questions was the success factors. And we asked them to qualify every success factor we have pinpointed in the literature review. And we asked them to qualify each success factor as very important, important, less important, or no opinion. So all of the companies that we have interviewed consider it improving their competitive advantage as a key success factor for the international expansion. So competitive advantage can take many different forms. It might be a specific technology or know-how, a strong brand, a competitive cost structure, etc. So that's really important, and it stays the main key factor, success factor for an internationalization. So having a competitive advantage on the international field is really important. So after the competitive advantage, we have, of course, the strategy, not a strategy written in a book of 100 pages, but only at least having a definition of the objective and the means. Another important factor mentioned by company was the involvement of the management team in the internationalization process. The management team refers not only to the internationalization team itself within the company, but also to the company board and company stakeholders and shareholders who support the company's CEO in the company's internationalization journey. So it's really important to understand, when we are talking about management team, every level of the management, from the shareholder to the director of sales or even the product manager. So all of the company survey considered the development of an internationalization strategy as important as mentioned, in order to ensure the success of the company internationalization journey. So we can summarize the various success factors we have pinpointed in 3 key success factors. So first, the competitive advantage, as we discussed. the management team buy-in, the second success factor we identified, and the development of an internationalization strategy. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all process for internationalization, but we are convinced that those three success factors are really important in an internationalization project or strategy for enterprise. So, in addition to asking companies about their key success factor, we also ask companies about the key obstacle to internationalization. And regulatory constraints were seen as the main obstacle, notably for the biotech sector, biopharma sector. Next to that, the cultural differences were also flagged up as a key constraint. Surprisingly, cost was not listed as a major obstacle to internationalization. Of course, it's a barrier, and it's listed in our constraint, and it's considered as, I would say, very important and important for 30% of the company interviewed, but it does not come on the podium. Less than 1 in 5 of the company that we surveyed had made an international acquisition. This was therefore not a priority for the majority of companies interviewed or surveyed. Company gave many reasons for not making an international acquisition. More than half of those surveyed believe that an international acquisition involves too much risk, and that the risk-reward ratio is not sufficiently skewed in favor of reward. More than a third of those surveyed considered that their company was too small to make an acquisition, and that an acquisition will be too expensive. So a lot of ideas are around the international acquisition, and there are, I would say, subjective. So what is being too small? What is too much risk? So it's really subjective, and then we will talk later about the public sector support, and I'm convinced there the public sector can help company and inform company about international acquisition strategy and opportunity. So in addition to the factor and obstacles that influence the decision to make an international acquisition or an internationalization process, it's also important to consider the substantial effort that has to be made in the post-acquisition phase. That's really important. Some of this effort includes create and nurture the synergy between the two companies in order to get the most value out of the acquisition. Adapt the governance structure of the acquired company and set up a new management team within the acquired company. And finally, take cultural differences into account. That's really important, and the post-acquisition phase, it's a really strategic phase in order to guarantee the success of acquisition, international acquisition. Marie-Laure, I will give you the floor.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. I wanted to speak to you about a tool that we developed at EY. That's a tool that helps businesses grow, which is called the EY Growth Navigator. This tool can be used to help companies in their growth and internationalization process. Actually, the tool has been modeled on the growth path of the world's leading companies. It is based on the 7 drivers of growth framework. And the aim of this framework is to ensure that we have a good balance of time, money, and energy that is invested across the 7 drivers of growth as the company grows. But let me just show you a small video. It takes less than 3 minutes, and it explains this tool in more detail.
You have a vision for your company's growth, but in today's fast-paced and ever-changing world, it's good to have the added confidence that you not only have the right plan for reaching market leadership, but that the leadership team you depend on to deliver it are all in sync. Introducing EY Growth Navigator, a uniquely interactive experience designed specifically to help you assess your businesses today and to provide you and your leadership team with a detailed plan for accelerating and sustaining growth into the future. At the core of the Growth Navigator experience are the EY 7 drivers of growth, which we've developed over years of working with some of the world's most successful and fastest growing companies. By charting your company's position against our drivers of growth, we help you benchmark your current performance relative to leading practices. Throughout the collaborative session, you are always in the driver's seat, tailoring the conversation to meet your needs and exploring the success drivers most relevant to you. Companies that succeed are the ones that find the right balance of focus between these 7 drivers for their business. And having assessed your company against the 7 drivers of growth, you can then agree on a set of actions prioritized according to your strategic needs to help you take the necessary steps towards your growth ambitions. You know your business, and we know your market. We bring all of our insights from working with these world-leading companies, which is why at EY, we don't tell you how to go about accelerating growth. We work with you to explore valuable insights, the kind that will help you step back, reflect, and think about growth beyond the typical approaches. We can hold interactive sessions across your business, so you can compare your perspectives with those of your management team, and ensure your vision is reflected in the goals, priorities, and actions of your entire leadership team. EY Growth Navigator. Arrange your one-on-one session today.
And then we can go back to a demo. Now, after this video, let me show you a quick demo of the tool so that you understand better how it works. And let's focus on the transaction driver. What we observe regarding the transaction driver is that market-leading businesses do not usually grow through organic growth alone. And we see that in this study that companies prefers organic growth. And here in the tool, we see that for the transaction driver, market-leading companies tend to push to external acquisition instead of organic growth. In order to grow, they look for strategic acquisitions in order to further enhance their growth, competitiveness, and profitability. Securing the right deal and finding the right partner has nothing to do with luck. You need to have a structure in place. But let's go to the demo so that I can show you. So let's click on the group meeting as if we were having a group discussion. Actually, let's say that we are visiting a company and we are doing this exercise with the management committee. And so we are discussing with the management committee about the 7 drivers of growth. And here you see the usual picture with the 7 drivers of growth. And then we can start the exercise. But here, let's state that we are going to concentrate on the transaction and alliances driver. And so here, we ask to the management committee, what is your current maturity level? So this arrow is the current assessment of the maturity level of the company. And let's discuss, are you here, or there? And so we are starting reading the different status, developing, established, or leading. Let's say that the company is saying, actually, we are under the blue part, that is the developing status, because our company is convinced that partnerships are essential for growth, but we are not yet that much involved in mergers and acquisitions. However, we would definitely like to become a leader in this field. And we are going to put the objective arrow in the leading part so that we can progress on that driver. And this is a high-level analysis on the driver transaction, but we can have a deeper analysis considering the sub-drivers. And for each of the 7 drivers of growth, we have different sub-drivers. For transaction, we have 3 sub-drivers, but we are not going to go into the 3 sub-drivers, but just let's take an example on the transaction strategy and planning. And here we do the same exercise. We ask the company what their current maturity assessment is and what their ambition is. So let's assume again that the company says we have more an opportunistic approach regarding M&A deals, and the due diligence are rather basic, more focused on financial, no legal, no HR, no commercial due diligence. Rather basic then. But however, we would like to develop a strong portfolio strategy in order to manage acquisitions and integration plans. So we want to be better. So we need to close the gap between what we are today and how we will be tomorrow let's say in a horizon of 3 or 4 years time. So let's continue. We have the 3 sub-drivers which are analyzed, and actually the tool makes a kind of average of the different arrows on the sub-drivers, and we compare the deeper analysis with the high-level analysis. So let's compare, and then we confirm, is the deeper analysis better than the first high-level analysis made on the driver? Let's confirm that the deeper analysis is better. And now the tool is going to propose a set of activities to close the gap between this and that, the current assessment of today, and what we want to be in 3 or 5 years horizon. So let's confirm. And the tool proposes a set of activities. Here we are only on the driver transaction, but we also have activities for all the other 6 drivers. Let's say, oh yes, I am interested to determine executive responsibility for M&A activity. Also, I want to identify aliases to fill gaps in business portfolio, and also create a formal process to identify and capture synergies and eliminate redundancy, and also set up a dedicated team to manage M&A activity, including due diligence and negotiating transactions. But actually, we go through all activities and we think of a more specific activity. And so we want to add a more specific activity, like, let's say, we are looking for a new acquisition, so search for a company, let's say, active in the clean tech, in Texas region. So we create a more specific activity, which is included in the chart as well, and then we continue. And the idea is now to have an idea of what is the level of urgency of this activity and what are their impact. And so we ask the management committee or the group we are talking to drag and drop the different activities in the different screens. Of course, you have understood that the blue chart is the most important ones, because these are the activities on which we need to concentrate, because the urgency is higher and the impact is higher as well. So that's the demo I wanted to show you. And as you can see, this This is a tool that we use worldwide within EY to help companies in their growing path and actually getting more and more mature, also getting more and more resilient so that the growth path is facilitated. But now let's go back to Caroline and to the study. Caroline is going to explain you how the public sector can support the internationalization process. Caroline, I give you the floor.
So thank you, Marie-Laure. Let's go back to the last part of our presentation today, which is the public sector support in the internationalization process for enterprise. So internationalization process can be supported, of course, by public authorities, and the role of the public sector within the promotion of the company's internationalization pass through three components. First, raising awareness. Second, provide support, so various types of support that we will discuss later, and then capitalize. So now we are going to debrief each of these components in the next slides and to go deeper in every component. So the first one is raising awareness. And then government should firstly communicate with companies in order to raise awareness regarding the benefits of internationalization. So government should also encourage companies to consider an ambitious approach to internationalization, going beyond exporting. So the first part of the slide, so we have 6 actions, sub-actions, which is the first one is to give the importance of the internationalization, make the internationalization a hot topic in the communication of the public sector. The second one is harmonization of the message. Be sure that we consider internationalization, the whole process of internationalization. And then we have seen that we have different stages, different way to consider internationalization. The third one is to clarify the message. Be sure that you consider the customer journey and to simplify the message. Keep it simple and ensure that every company can be included in the journey and can find some support to internationalization project and process. The development of tools can be also done by public sector, public authorities. We are talking with a company, and market intelligence tool is something that can be useful for a company, especially for small company, because they don't have the resource to do such market intelligence analysis. Sharing knowledge, of course, share the information, share the study, share information. And the last one is regulatory watch, because as we have discussed, the regulatory can be a big constraint for certain sector. And then the public authorities can help to develop a regulatory watch, general regulatory watch for company. And the company can easily have access to certain information for certain sector, for certain country, and so on. So the other part of this slide is regarding the demystification of internationalization. And then we have three points that we would like to address. The first one is the maturity diagnostic. That's a very useful tool. Already developed for Wallonia, but for Wallon company, but we can make it a bit further. We can have more development to this tool to ensure that it's an online tool accessible to every company. We also have the support services, and that's really important that the public authorities and public bodies can evaluate their services to ensure that they are well calibrated to the needs of the companies, and also promote the key players, ensure that the company which have succeeded in the internationalization process are promoted and then can this is a source of inspiration for other companies, of course. Yeah. So the second one, supports. So government should accompany companies in their international development. This support should be timely, high level, specific, and limited in duration. Government support could include tailor-made support services for companies, identification of company with a high internationalization potential via the maturity diagnostic we just talked about a minute ago, and after specialized support services. But also offering support to company management team, offer risk finance for ambitious internationalization plans projects. The third one, capitalization. So finally, government and public bodies should capitalize on past experience. The aim should be to better understand the needs of company in order to better support them. And then capitalization is, of course, promotion of example of success, but also allowing space, give space, opportunity to company to create international network, local network, but also peer-to-peer. Entrepreneurs are very keen to discuss with other entrepreneurs, to share their experience, to learn from each other. And the last one, the number 5 in this slide, is leverage on data. Public sector has a lot of data, and they need to capitalize, they need to exploit better their data to better adjust their tool and to offer a better, more efficient support to a company. Then, so of course, each company will have its own internationalization journey. It's a unique journey finally, and this journey will depend upon factors that are endogenous but also exogenous to the company, but also upon the structure of the company management. And here we have a sort of checklist that can be used to set up the diagnostic, the maturity diagnostic tool, and it can be seen as a list of questions, a list of points that have to be considered by the company before or when they are in the internationalization project in their strategy, to be sure that they have considered every important element in internationalization project. And then we have the preparations aspect, the different stage, what form, what stage of internationalization for the company, the market knowledge, that's very important. Are you sure that you know very well the market where you are going to? The regulatory aspect, we discussed it. It's a huge constraint for certain companies in certain sector. So with this checklist, we ensure that the company has considered this point. And finally, the financing, the funding, how you will finance your internationalization. So that was the public sector aspect, and how the public sector can support and can encourage the company towards the internationalization project. So now it's time to wrap up, and then we have summarized the key message in one slide. So first, of course, internationalization is a key driver of growth, of course, especially in Wallonia, a small open economy. Internationalization is often seen as an incremental, gradual process, as I explained it to you. So we have the majority of companies doing an incremental process in their internationalization project. And next to that, we have the Born Globals company, for which the internationalization is really in the DNA and comes from at the beginning of their growth story. The success factor, as we discussed it, we have, of course, the competitive advantage at the national but also international level. It remains the involvement of the management team and also the strategy itself. The regulatory constraint and the cultural difference are, of course, the key constraint. They need to be considered as from the beginning of the internationalization trajectory. And if internationalization acquisition is often in the mind of the entrepreneur, they can consider it. It's another story to do it, to really realize the international acquisition. And we have a lot of idea and conventional wisdom beyond the international acquisition. So public authorities have definitely a role to play in the internationalization process to support the company by raising awareness, by providing various forms of support, finance, but also sharing information, developed tools, maturity diagnostic, but other market intelligence of other tools we discussed previously, and ensure the capitalization and ensure that the good example are I would say the good example, the success of the Walloon enterprise at the international level are documented and are shared amongst the community of entrepreneur and enterprise. That was the key message, and then that was my last slide for the today webinar. So I give the floor to Hugo to conclude this this presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing these results. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Marie-Laure. This was really a nice webinar today with you. I would like to ask you, Marie-Laure, as a pilot of this study, what would be your concluding words regarding this international growth?
I would say that regarding international growth, we need really to push or to make Walloon companies aware that internationalization is really important if they want to grow. I also think that the crisis we currently know, the COVID-19 crisis, is also a good momentum to rethink about the business model of the company and see how they can develop new strategies to go more towards international, but also to review the supply chain and the geo-risk investments or exportation. We know that in the study that Walloon companies prefer export than really having an external acquisition. They prefer to grow by organic growth rather than going towards an external growth. But really, we think that it is a good momentum now to rethink the whole process. Also, the tool I showed you, the EY Growth Navigator, is still a very interesting tool in this time of the COVID-19 crisis, because the tool is not only a matter of growth, but also a matter of being more and more mature and getting more resilient to the crisis. And actually, at the moment, at EY, we are thinking of and also helping our client to be more resilient towards this crisis. And to do this, we are articulating our thinking around 3 time horizons: the now, the next, and the beyond. The now addresses the challenge to remain in existence today. Next addresses the capacity to become resilient to the crisis, and the beyond refers to developing strategies to return to prosperity in the new normal after the crisis. I will not explain all in details, but just draw your attention to a few relevant points that are really important to become more resilient to the crisis. And it is not only a matter of internationalization, but also rethink the whole process. Certainly, companies cannot restart their business as if nothing happened. They certainly need to rethink their business model, restructure, rethink or optimize their supply chain, how to ensure customer access, mitigate geo-risk, create buffers, or of course reduce costs short term, but as well achieve to get a more agile cost, increasing workforce flexibility. Agility is key today. We see that companies before the crisis that are already on the web did not survive during the crisis, whereas some other companies were not at all on the web and started selling products on the web and were very much agile. So agility is key. Also, we see that state aid measures, of course, are helping and are more than welcome to reduce the liquidity issues and reduce the insolvency risk. But what is really important and what I wanted to focus on, and that we had never observed before the crisis, is innovative collaboration. Innovative collaboration offers new perspectives. And during the crisis, we have many examples of innovative collaboration, but just take two. One, you have seen the GSK, UCB, and Janssen Pharmaceutica, and many others are collaborating all together to develop a vaccine. We see also a nice collaboration between Decathlon and Colruyt. Technically unemployed Decathlon workers are providing some relief to Colruyt workers. This would not have happened without the crisis. The balance of competition versus collaboration is shifting dramatically. The opportunities to establish collaboration platforms appears to be endless for large, but also for smaller companies. So enhancing the shock of absorption capacity of the system. So really, in the future, these innovative and collaborative strategies need to be developed. Of course, financial performance will remain key and important, but alongside the need for a sense of purpose and the notion of societal profitability will emerge. So what I wanted to say here, Hugo, I will say in a word or in a few words, is that the crisis today is really an opportunity to rethink, to restructure your business model in order to be more resilient, and also do not forget to think of innovative collaboration. And what I would like just to end, thank you, Transeo, thank you, Sewalfin, for this study. For us, it was also very interesting to do this with you and to collaborate all together. It is as well an innovative collaboration to perform this webinar all together. Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you very much to you. It was really a pleasure to have you to this webinar and sharing these great highlights on international growth and on the situation of COVID-19 right now, and the good advice you give to the companies, to the entrepreneurs, but also to the ecosystem actors. You give really great advice to move forward into to get over with this crisis. So I would like also to remind members watching this webinar that if they have any question for you, we will give you the contact details, so feel free also to contact. And now I would like to go back to you, Mr. Di Bartolomeo. We will speak about COVID-19 a bit later, but first I would like to ask you what you think about the conclusions of the study from Sewalfin point of view.
Well, thanks, Hugo. This study has been useful for Sewalfin to better understand the needs of companies seeking to grow in the Walloon region and beyond our borders. As you know, Soalfin provides information, guidance, and support to companies with growth projects. These companies grow in Wallonia, but Wallonia is quite small, so companies also need to grow outside Wallonia, in the rest of Belgium, but also on international level. So we make sure we can help them in all kinds of growth projects. For instance, we have a subsidiary, Sofinex, specially dedicated to find a solution on the financial solutions for Walloon companies that want to take over companies abroad or that want to grow on an international base. In addition, Success, you know also Success, of course, the founding members of Transeo, is helping SME to grow by sourcing interesting deal opportunities for strategic buyers. We help them finding targets locally, but also abroad with our network of partners and, of course, with Transeo.
Well, that's good that you mentioned Transeo, because I want to ask you, how does Transeo help you to support Walloon SMEs to grow internationally?
Well, as chairman of Transeo, I'm first of all happy to see that our international community of members is able to help companies in their respective ecosystem to have access to deal-making opportunities. Recently, the Transeo Deal Club, for instance, makes strategic acquisition beyond local border easier. With our members, we are working to break down the barriers of international acquisition for small and medium-sized enterprise, enabling a greater trust among each other, which is the key if they want to succeed in your acquisition project. For example, by facilitating the exchange of deal opportunities between our members with this Transeo Deal Club. Transeo also encouraged growth by international acquisition for many years. Back in 2011, when we carried out our first deal breaker study, we already found out that the opacity of the local M&A market was considered as an obstacle to cross-border international acquisitions. We are convinced SMEs have big growth opportunities by taking over companies in their local countries, but also abroad. The rationale behind the strategy to go abroad as an SME is diverse. SMEs can develop in foreign and high potential market to gain know-how and specific technology. They get new market shares or split this risk between several countries.
Okay, I think we understood that international growth and especially international acquisitions represent a real opportunity for companies from Wallonia, but also for beyond. But now, what is your feeling about the future of these international acquisitions due to the current crisis of COVID-19?
Well, it's clear that this COVID-19 crisis we're facing now is throwing some sand in the wheels of companies. I see it very closely in Wallonia, as everyone, I guess, but I know this is the same in Europe and all over the world. I still see some deals, but a lot of the deals are on hold upon request from the buyer, the seller, or both. Priorities have shifted to survival of the company, having enough cash, protecting your assets and employees, how to shift your activities. So the focus naturally moves. It moves away from acquisition now to survival. Once we all have a clear view of the after COVID-19 world, I expect things to catch up and get back to normal. However, I expect also more protectionism from countries. We already see that there are some kind of behavior going in that way that will do everything they can. Those countries will even think about nationalization to protect their strategic industry and their crown jewels from so-called aggressive foreign buyers. It will probably make cross-border acquisition a bit more difficult, but it also creates new opportunities for local buyers. Foreign buyers will definitely have to show that they have real perspective, and they have perspectives for the acquired company, and that they threats they will treat all the stakeholders with respect. Otherwise, they won't reassure the local authorities. I also expect a change in some complex value chain with some relocation initiatives. Companies will be eager to have a greater control on some of their key activities. As we've seen that when a factory stops in China, it quickly impacts a lot of production capacities in Europe, for example. Some of this relocation will probably be achieved by means of acquisition. As you can see, things are rough for the moment. They will probably remain so in the short terms, but there are and there will be opportunities that need to be grasped. I'm convinced that it is the companies that will dare doing some bold moves in these uncertain times that will come out stronger of the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Di Bartolomeo. Thank you very much, everyone, for your precious input today. I would like to say to members watching this webinar that if you have any question for our speakers, we would be happy to answer them and put you in contact. We hope you enjoyed this webinar, and we are looking forward to our next webinar. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.